Have you ever thought of a true nightmare coming to life? Well, today, that's exactly what happens. This unlucky man came inches away from death. It was the summer of 2019, and I was heading home after visiting my parents in Idaho. The road was long and dark. The trouble began somewhere around the Idaho-Nevada border, along a stretch of Highway 93. It was about 11 p.m. I was low on fuel and had been searching for a gas station. My car's GPS had been malfunctioning for most of the trip, and I relied on road signs to navigate. That's when I noticed the headlights of a truck in my rearview mirror. It was a massive 18-wheeler. I figured the driver would pass me eventually, but he didn't. Instead, he kept driving behind me. I tried to ignore it, telling myself that the driver was probably just bored, but as the minutes ticked by, I started to wonder what was going on. The truck came really close, almost hitting my bumper, then fell back again, only to repeat the pattern. My heart began to race as I realized this wasn't just some trucker playing games. This was something serious. I hit the gas, trying to put some distance between us, but the truck accelerated too, easily matching my speed. The road was empty. Panic set in, and I frantically searched for an exit or a gas station, but there was nothing but empty highway ahead. Suddenly, the truck sped up, coming so close that I could see the driver figure through the windshield. I swerved, barely keeping control of the car, and that's when I saw the turnoff, a small road leading off the highway. Without thinking, I took the side road. The truck drove past, missing my car by inches. I pulled over to reclaim my thoughts. My hands were shaking. For a moment, I thought I was safe, but then, in the distance, I saw the truck slowing down. He had realized I wasn't on the highway anymore. He was coming back for me. I sped down the narrow road, hoping it would lead to some sort of civilization. The road was rough, and the truck appeared behind me again. The road began to wind through a forest, with trees on either side. I struggled to keep the car on the road. He was toying with me, trying to run me off the road. I tried to come up with a plan. There was no way my sedan could outrun an 18-wheeler on this terrain. I needed to find a way to lose him. Up ahead, I saw a gas station with a single flickering light. It looked abandoned, but I had no other options. I swerved into the parking lot. I killed the engine and the lights, praying the trucker hadn't seen me. I held my breath as the truck drove closer. The headlights swept across the parking lot, but they didn't stop. I watched as the truck drove past the gas station, continuing down the road. I waited until the sound of the engine stopped. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. I knew I couldn't stay here for long. The trucker might come back, and this place offered no real protection. I needed to find help, or at least get back to the main highway where there might be other cars. I restarted the car and slowly pulled out of the parking lot, keeping the lights off as I drove back onto the road. I decided to head in the opposite direction from where the truck had gone, hoping to find a town or a road that would lead me back to safety. But as I was driving, my heart sank. The road was blocked. A massive logging truck had crashed across both lanes, its trailer tipped over and spilling logs across the pavement. It was a trap. The trucker had led me into a dead end. Before I could react, I saw the headlights of the 18-wheeler in my rearview mirror again. He had circled back, and now I was trapped between him and the logging truck. Panic surged through me as I realized there was no way out. I slammed the car into reverse, but the trucker was already on me. I could see him more clearly now. He started driving forward. I threw the car into drive and tried to swerve around the logging truck, but there was no room. The 18-wheeler was closing in, forcing me closer and closer to the logs scattered across the road. My tires squealed as I tried to turn, but the car spun out, sliding to a stop sideways in front of the logging truck's trailer. The trucker didn't stop. He kept coming. I managed to open the door and squeeze out, my only thought to get away before he crushed. I ran towards the trees, but the truck followed after me. I could hear the crunch of metal as it crashed with my car. I looked back just in time to see the driver's door flying open. I didn't wait to see more. I sprinted into the forest. I could hear the trucker crashing through the trees behind me. My legs were tired, but I didn't dare slow down. The forest was a maze. The trees were all looking the same. I had no idea where I was going, but I kept running. The sound of the trucker kept pushing me forward. My foot caught on a root, and I went down hard. I scrambled to my feet, but it was too late. He was on me. A massive hand clamped down on my shoulder, and I was thrown backward. I fought desperately, kicking and clawing, but he was too strong. He threw me to the ground, and I landed hard. I tried to crawl away, but he grabbed me again. He was too strong. He didn't say a word as he dragged me back towards the road. I struggled, but it was like fighting against a brick wall. He dragged me towards the logging truck, and that's when I saw it, a long length of chain hanging from the trailer. My blood ran cold as I realized what he intended to do. He slammed me against the trailer. I tried to scream, but he clamped a hand over my mouth. With his other hand, he grabbed the chain and wrapped it around my wrists, securing me to the trailer. I thrashed against the bonds, but they only tightened, cutting into my skin. The trucker stepped back, and for the first time I saw his face. It was rough and scarred. He leaned in close. "Ain't no one gonna find you out here," he whispered. "You're all mine." Then he turned and walked back to his truck, leaving me chained to the trailer. I watched in horror as he climbed into the cab and started the engine, and then the truck started moving, dragging the trailer and me behind it. I screamed as hard as I could. I somehow managed to get on my feet, but the speed of the truck's movement made me fall off. I hit the ground hard. Pain shot up my arms as the chains stretched and I was dragged along the road, gravel tearing all my clothes and my skin. The truck moved slowly at first. I tried to scream again, but there is no point. There is no one here. I knew I couldn't survive this much longer. My body was already weakening. I had to find a way out. Any way out, or I was going to die here, chained to the back of this guy's truck. Then, I spotted something, a piece of metal on the side of the trailer, just within reach of my free hand. It was a rusty bolt sticking out from the frame, the kind that secured the trailer's side panels. A desperate hope rushed through me. If I could grab it, maybe I could work the chains loose, or at least find a way to break free. I twisted my body, ignoring the searing pain in my wrists, and reached out with my hand. The first few attempts missed, my fingers scraping uselessly against the metal. But I forced myself to keep trying, stretching as far as I could while the truck dragged me along the ground. Finally, my fingers closed around the bolt. I gripped it tight, using it as leverage to pull myself up just enough to get some slack in the chains. My wrists were in so much pain, the chains were digging into raw flesh, but I ignored it and focused on the bolt. I twisted it as hard as I could, praying that it would come loose. For a moment, it didn't budge, but then it began to turn. I worked frantically, each turn of the bolt loosening the chain just a little bit more. The truck picked up speed, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. My survival depended on this one bolt, this one chance to escape. Finally, the bolt came free, and the chain slipped from the trailer. I tumbled to the ground, the sudden release sending me rolling across the gravel. The truck driving forward didn't know the fact that I was no longer chained to the back. I lay there, every inch of my body screaming in pain, but I was free. I knew I couldn't stay there. The trucker would realize I was gone any second, and he'd come back for me. I forced myself to my feet, as my legs are going to give out any second now. I limped towards the trees, trying to find a hiding spot. I made it into the woods. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed to get as far away from that road as possible. I was in pain, but I couldn't stop, not yet. I could still hear the truck's engine, distant but growing louder. He was coming back. I pushed myself harder, forcing my body to keep moving. The fear and adrenaline were driving me on. The forest was dense, the ground was thick and tangled, but I didn't care. As long as it kept me hidden, it was my best chance. Suddenly, I could hear the truck idling somewhere nearby. I could hear the driver's footsteps as he searched for me. I knew that if he heard me, it would all be over. I couldn't let him find me. I crawled further into the underbrush, finding a bush to hide in. I curled up, trying to make myself as small and quiet as possible, praying that he wouldn't see me. The footsteps came closer. I could see the beam of his flashlight sweeping through the trees. I held my breath. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. The beam of light passed over me once, then again, pointing it at me for just a moment too long. I froze, not daring to move a muscle, as I was praying for him not to spot me. But then the light moved on, the footsteps continuing down the path. I waited until I was sure he was far enough away, then slowly, cautiously, I started to crawl away from my hiding spot, but I knew I couldn't stay there. I had to keep moving. Had to find help before he realized I was still out there. I crawled through the underbrush. The sounds of the truck and the trucker fading into the distance behind me was the best feeling ever. The forest was thick, but I kept going, driven by the fear of what would happen if he found me again. Finally, after what felt like hours, I got out of the forest onto a small dirt road. It was in the middle of nowhere, but it gave me hope. If I could follow it, maybe I'd find a house, a car, someone who could help me. I started limping down the road. Every step felt like hell, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. The thought of that trucker finding me kept me moving, kept me pushing forward even when every part of me wanted to collapse. It's crazy what a human body is capable under life or death situations. Then I saw it, a small farmhouse in the distance. I felt so relieved. The farmhouse, my only lifeline. As I got closer, I saw a truck parked in the driveway, an old but sturdy-looking pickup. I made my way to the front door, knocking on it with what little strength I had left. I prayed someone was home, that they would hear me before it was too late. After what felt like an eternity, the door creaked open, and an older man came outside. His face was a mix of shock and concern as he looked at me. I must have looked like hell, bloodied, bruised, barely standing, but he didn't hesitate. He pulled me inside, calling out to his wife as he helped me to a chair. They asked me what had happened, but I was too exhausted to answer. All I could do was mutter a few words about a trucker, the chains, the forest. The man assured me that I was safe now, that they would call the police. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you have a story yourself, you can write it to me through email. You can find it in the description of the video.